Welcome back to CBS This Morning. President Trump has signed a nearly $900 billion COVID relief package that he called a disgrace. Mr. Trump is still pushing Congress to remove what he calls wasteful items and increase the size of payments to Americans despite objections from his own party. Meanwhile, the president still has not conceded the November election, insisting he lost because of his unproven claims of voter fraud. CBS News senior political analyst and 60 Minutes correspondent John Dickerson joins us now. John, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Vlad. Good to see you.
So President Trump abruptly reversed course. He signed this COVID relief bill after his initial resistance and largely being absent from the negotiations. Why?
Well, it's not certain. I mean, let's take it at face value. The president's strategy seemed to have been that in this crisis moment, he wanted to basically use the deadline and the high stakes, the fact that people were in danger of losing benefits, that people were really hurting, use that to get more in terms of benefits and also to cut spending. That's what he said out loud. The problem is he had no leverage. And so when he tried to use the crisis of the deadline to get leverage, to get more, it didn't work at all. Of course, there's been plenty of reporting that suggests also that he was throwing a kind of tantrum, angry at Republican leaders for not buying his notion about a stolen election, and that he was basically just causing chaos. But either way, it didn't get him anything.
Yeah, it's not clear what his strategy was. The president waited until the bill was on his desk before weighing in with criticism of his own party's demands. And I'm just trying to understand the strategy. What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, you're right. So people should remember, this was patiently worked out by his own administration, by his Treasury Secretary. And the problem with government is that it is sometimes imperfect, and sometimes you can only get half a loaf or 3/4 of a loaf. And it was all worked out to the best deal they could get, given the situation and given the approaching deadline. So by coming in at the last minute, he tried to use that as leverage, but there was no leverage to be had, and it was highly ineffective, and it wasted a lot of time, and it's not like the stakes aren't high for all the other things on the agenda in front of government. There is a lot to be concerned about, and so this was really just a lot of wasted effort running around the mulberry bush.
As you know, John, the president also demanded that wasteful items be removed from the omnibus bill, which keeps the government funded. I saw you musing about this on Twitter. It struck me that the president was like a big city editor looking at the bill and redlining it. But does he have the ability to even do that?
Well, the important thing to know when looking at this entire drama is it's not that the goals the president had were somehow unworthy. It was the process by which he went about trying to achieve those goals that was highly ineffective. And so what ended up happening in the end is he signed a bill. The bill didn't change in the way he wanted it to, and he got none of the things he asked for. What he said is he'll be redlining the bill using something called the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, as all Americans know. And this is a real thing. It has been used, not since the year 2000, but it's used in highly specific situations, and basically, if you read the letter of that Impoundment Control Act, there's no way Congress is going to do what he's asking it to do. So in a sense, even though what he says is not completely made up, it essentially has no effectiveness and will do nothing to change the spending. So it's kind of a pretend thing.
John, let me ask you about the Senate runoffs in Georgia. Could the president's claims of election fraud, his resistance to this bill, could that potentially affect voter turnout in Georgia?
You know, it's always difficult to try to predict what voter turnout is going to look like. And we learned that in this last election, and we shouldn't have had to learn it again because it's always dangerous. I think what we've seen is there's been a great deal of money that's been donated, more money to the Democrats than the Republicans. Of course, that was true in many races this last cycle, and the Republicans went ahead and won. There has been confusion, people acting on the president's behalf who say the election is stolen, telling Republicans in Georgia not to vote for the two Senate candidates, but the president's now going there there for a rally. So you don't want confusion in elections. You want people to be riled up and on your side. And one of the strongest arguments Republicans have is that they need to be a check in the Senate against a Democratic President, Joe Biden. The problem is that the president is saying that he doesn't believe Joe Biden is president. So there is a contradiction whether it has political power and causes people not to vote. We're just going to have to wait to see.
John Dickerson making us smarter this morning. Appreciate it as always, John. Thank you very much.